Hi everyone, it's 15th of March. I'm going to plant these first early spuds. It's a lot later than I'd usually do it. I'd usually do it sort of about 2-3 weeks ago, but weather's just been horrendous, so I've not been able to do anything really. So I need seedlings that need pricking out. Tomato seedlings got bashed by a bit of cold, and I put them out for a few hours the other day, so they're not looking too good, so I've resown some more. So these potatoes are what I grew for Christmas. The variety is Swift, so I had some left over, so I thought, well, instead of buying some, I might as well put them to use. So there's videos about chitting. These are called chits, and when you plant them, these need to be sort of upright. So like I said, they're a first early, so they only really need sort of like 10 to 12 weeks. So I'll put a little bit of compost in the bottom of these with some chicken manure pellets, just a few, not many, you know, probably 20 grams in each one. So I'm going to put a bit more compost in. I'm just using B&Q Zone Verve compost. I'm just going to fill the pots, you know, not that far, just a few inches in the bottom. I've turned the bag of compost upside down because it's pretty wet, so I won't be watering these, you know, because it's plenty damp enough, and any risk of cold snap, you don't want it icing up. Would be an idea if you put them in a polytunnel to drape a little bit of fleece over the top, just to help trying to keep them a little bit warmer. Obviously, with them being in pots, they'll absorb a bit of heat during the day, which hopefully keep them through the nights. So there's probably 3 inches of compost in the bottom of these now. So what we're putting now is a bit of fertiliser, and I've just got bloodfish and bone. I'm going to shove about 100 grams in each pot. Just going to dust it in. Just save a little bit for after, and just give that a good mixing. I think I usually do 4 pots, so I thought I'll just do 3 for now. So there's no vermiculite or anything like that in this, it's just plain multi-purpose compost. Any brand will do, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Right, so that's them sort of prepared. So we get 2 seed potatoes, chit side up. They're near enough down till they're touching the bottom of the pot, more or less. Same in each of them. I'm just remembering which orientation I've put them in. So there's quite a few. You can snap some chits off if you want, but because the first early is for small potatoes, I'm not going to bother. So that's 2 in each of them, sort of planted in the orientation of that way, because the next layer I'm going to plant across that way. And it's basically put some compost over the top of them. Just go a bit careful when you're covering the first bit of each potato, you don't want to snap any of the chits off. I mean, they probably will sprout again. Just keep adding and compost, probably till you get sort of almost the halfway mark. If you've only got like a 10-litre bucket, just put 1 seed potato in that. Unless you've got a lot of really tiny spuds, you might be able to get away with 2. But when they're growing, they are pretty thirsty. You don't have to have a polytunnel to do this, but I'd put them in a sort of sunny, sheltered area. You don't want them really exposed to all the elements. And off the floor as well, because obviously if it rains, you don't want them getting waterlogged. Probably be okay with that sheet of perspex over them. As long as a bit of airflow can get underneath the perspex, not so bad. Just a little bit early to put them in the ground yet, that's all. And I used to always put them in the ground sort of last week of March, but weather over the sort of past decade is, the seasons are all wrong now. They just don't seem to be like they used to be. You know, we had a nice warm spell in February. Pretty much from the beginning of March it's been horrendous. So they're all up to about the halfway mark. So just a little bit of bloodfish and bone now. Just going to give a little dusting. Like so. Just carefully mix it because I don't want to be catching anything from underneath. I mean, you can use Gromo. I used Gromo last year, but I found it didn't break down too well, so gone back to bloodfish and bone. You don't really need anything. You could probably do okay, you know, without. So I'll then get next layer of potatoes. So the first ones were that way, so now I'm going to put them across that way. Some of these potatoes are really small, but instead of chucking them out, I thought I'll put them to use. I've got enough to do more pots, but three's enough for now. You know, because sometimes when you buy your seed potatoes, they are quite small, and you think, oh, it's a bit too small, but they're fine. They're perfectly fine. And basically, carefully cover them. You don't have to break it up too fine. Got pretty good good roots for busting. They are known for breaking heavy soils up, as potatoes are, so you don't mind a bit of coarse stuff. Old grow bags and stuff like that, perfectly fine. I'm not going to fill them all the way to the top. What I probably will do is, in about 8 weeks' time, when I water them, I'll probably start feeding with a bit of tomato feed. You know, to do like a bit of a high potash feed. It just helps at the end, I think. But then they're pretty straightforward. You will, if you put potato in some soil or whatever, you will get something. You know, even homemade compost, if it's from your garden waste, still do fine in that. You'll always get some. Fully intend sitting down and replying to a lot of comments because I've had loads. I've just not had time to. I've read them all, so thanks for all your comments. I need to sit down and just reply, really. So I'll make that a job one evening. Sit down with plenty of cups of tea and have a reread through them all and reply. I've not watched any other YouTube videos for a while. Just been fairly busy. Obviously I'm doing this indoors because it's horrible outside, even though it's sunny. That wind's cold. ground is wet. Trick is with this B&Q compost, if you have a B&Q near you, if you buy it later on in the year, sort of winter, they'll usually do it a lot cheaper. It'll be discounted. As long as you kind of put it somewhere where it's not going to get completely washed out, it will be okay. Anything save a few quid, and then you can use it to put in your borders or whatnot the year after. That's all I'm going to do, and then as they grow, once they start coming through, I'll keep adding compost until I pretty much can't get any more in the pots, but not right to the top, because obviously I want it to sink down so when I water them it's not going to just overflow all the time. And probably within about 4 or 5 weeks, depending on the weather, they should start poking their heads through. Right, so that's the first of potatoes done. I'm going to sow some peas now. The variety is Hearst Green Shaft. They're a second early, I think. Oh, a second crop. Just multi-purpose composting gutters. If you want to buy some gutter, it's actually called square gutter. You can use any gutter. If you can get deep gutter, probably a bit better, but this is just standard square gutter. Peas I've soaked. Sometimes I soak them for a couple of hours, sometimes I won't soak them. These have had about an hour, 2 hours most to soak, so they're just draining off. I put multi-purpose compost in these, just use a little tray, just to try and get a sort of flat base. That compost is pretty wet anyway, so I'm not going to really water these too much, because they can be a bit funny for rotting off peas. They are a cool weather crop, they do like a bit of cool weather, they don't really like red hot weather. So you can sow them pretty much from March to June really, or a bit later if you want, depending on your growing conditions. There's different ways you can do it. You know, there's this 5 dice sort of thing where you put them so like 3 inches apart, and then you shove one in the middle, so you get like a number 5 on the dice. But I'm not going to bother this year with that. I'm just going to just give them a bit of a scattering, and just not too thickly, because sometimes you can see little bare patches and then you think, oh, I'll pour some more in. Before you know it, you've got way too many seeds in there. And you've got to think, when you go picking them, you can end up with masses, and they do need a bit of airflow, because obviously they're prone to mildew and things like that. So give them a fairly good spreading. This is just basically a pack of DT Browns, Hearst Green Shaft. I'm just splitting the whole pack over what will end up about a 15-foot row. Whatever that is in metres, 4.5 metres or something like that. So you can go along with thin them out a bit if you want, but say there's no need to be too sort of picky about it really. This compost is about 1/2 inch down from the top. If you bury them a bit too deep and they get wet, they'll rot off. And then if your compost is really dry on top, when they start to germinate, you get big flat bits of compost. The compost lifts, so they're usually okay. I have found when I use my own seed from the previous year, I have got some, that tends to do a bit better. So just bolt your peas in like that, and just sprinkle your compost over the top to cover them. I mean, you can put vermiculite in and all that lot if you want, but I'm not going to bother, not for peas. And then I'll sow some more probably direct in April when these will actually go out. Got to try and get a good sturdy growth on them. I like to try and get them out just to start seeing them put tendrils out, then they're wanting to grab hold of the net then. If you put them out and they get high winds and they're exposed to it, they can rock about a bit. And God knows what else has a go, pigeons and rabbits. The usual thing, there's always something working against you. So it's a case of some for you, some to lose, and some for Mother Nature. And somewhere there should be a balance, so you should get something. But as everything, there's always something that doesn't do too well certain years. That's just gardening. Sometimes it can be a struggle to get out the gutters, when you come to plant them, but the trick is just before you're going to put them out, absolutely flood them with water. And I don't tend to do them in, you can struggle if you've got a really long length. You can do it in shorter lengths if you want, like 2 foot lengths, which will be even easier. But it's when you try and do like full 3 metre lengths, you can get them out. I say you need to get it nice and wet, it just helps them slide out. Because this compost is from near the top of the bag sort of. Now it's a bit drier, but like I said, I'm not going to water them too much. I'm just going to lightly tap it down with my hand just to flatten them off, just to make sure everything's in good contact with compost. So you've only really got 5 to 10 mil above the top of the seed, because if it's quite deep down where it stays fairly damp and gets cold, they can rot off. If you have problems with mice, they can peck them, they can nibble them out, and birds will peck them out too. So it just depends where you're putting them. Put a little something over them to protect them. It's like when I plant these out, I tend to get a bit of aggro off some of the birds and that, so I usually put a net out. Once they get about a foot high and they've grabbed hold, they're kind of left alone. So I've got a little watering bottle here, so I'm just going to give them really little water, not much at all. It's just to help bed that top layer of compost down onto them. Because the compost at the bottom is fairly wet, so when compost gets in contact, this whole wicking action starts, where it draw moisture up throughout it. And don't let them dry out fully, but don't over soak them, while the cold weather's still there. Last year, I don't know if it was the actual batch of seeds, a lot of people had a problem getting them to germinate. They were patchy. I think it was the second batch last year that ended up doing okay for me. First ones just didn't fire. I don't know if it was old seed, because a lot of them floated. I prefer if I put seed in water, anything that sinks, I kind of think, well, there's something viable in there. I don't put any ends on the gutter in case you get like any drips going in them or anything like that. It can still drain out the ends. I just pack the compost a little tighter at the ends to stop it coming out. And that usually sorts it out. It seems like there's a lot of water here, but over the amount of compost I've just put in, it's not a lot. That'll drain straight through. So there's a little pea that popped up to the top there, you can just nestle it down. So that's the peas done. So I don't need to label them because it's the only thing I put in gutters. So fingers crossed they'll germinate and go out in 4 to 5 weeks. So that's them done. Alright, I'm going to prick out some of these brassicas now. These are the ones that were sold in the last video. The Durham Early, I think it's green antelope, Clapton cauliflower, golden acre, which is like a summer cabbage, and the Aquil's broccoli. The Aquil's is a bit, you know, lagging behind for some reason, but they'll be alright. So I'm not going to show you all these because I do all my brassicas, they're all done the same. I might show at some point where I do the thing with the drinking straws. If I don't, if you look in my videos from last year, which is 2018, I explained it in that, you know, why I do the drinking straws and how I do it. So we'll do the Clapton collie, which was recommended to me by Nigel from Muddy Boots. So I've not seen any videos for a bit, Nigel, so I need to catch up, so I hope everything's alright. I've got some small pots, probably only like 2.5 inch. They're a bit on the small side really, but that's all I've got for now, and they'll do. I bought these years ago from Asda, they were £2 a tray, so I thought, well, they'll do. No, I've got all my pricking out tools, so I'm using a trusty fork, and I found the little dibber thing, but you can use a pencil or your finger if you want. So we shall see how we go. But it's just a simple case of getting your fork and trying to scoop it up with as much of the root as you can. Some people are a bit over the top where you can't grab by the stem, but as long as you don't snap them, you know, and you get all that, you get, you know, good clump of root with it, and then you're good to go. It's simply use a dibber, make a hole in the middle. We'll drop this down right the way in, as far as it'll go really, and you can push the root ball down a bit, because these seed leaves are actually going to be dispatched of when they get planted out. And then just simply put your compost around it, just pat it down, and these are going to get watered a little bit from the top, but mainly from the bottom. So I'm going to sit them in a tray of water for about 20 minutes, and they can have a good soak through. And in the bottom of these trays, it's completely hollow. You know, there's a hole in the bottom of them, so they can drain through. So I'll do a couple more. It's all I'm going to be pricking out on this video, because everything else isn't quite ready yet. You know, some of the lettuce are struggling. That's why we have some really cold winds, and because they've been in the polytunnel, then they're susceptible to getting a little bit glum, but I'm sure they'll catch up. There's no point being too soft with your seeds, because they're going to have to go out in the elements, you know, if you're going to be growing them out on an allotment or in the garden. So if you pamper your plants, the minute you go outside, they're not going to stand much chance. So don't baby them, and they should be, they stand every chance of, you know, a good head start against the elements really. So I only actually need 8, but I always do a double batch, always, you know, because there's always friends and family that might want some, plus if things don't go well, I've got a backup batch. You know, if I do lose a plant at the plot, I've got some that are, you know, the same sort of age. You can actually keep them so they get a little bit pot bound, and you can hold them back a little bit. You just got to keep an eye out for, obviously, when the weather warms up, the slugs and everything will be out in force, so they'll quite happily chomp down on the seedling and most of everything else at the allotment. But they're pretty robust. They might sulk for a day or two. If you lose the odd one, then so be it. You know, it's better to have a plant that's got through this stage. It's been out in the elements a little bit, because when, you know, on the nice days I will get them out in the wind, not really windy, but just to give them a little bit of a rock about, because I do think that sort of gets the plant ready to go out in the ground with a tougher stem on it. And when I put the drinking straws on, it does straighten the stems up, to be honest, and it does help them. You know, and I'll just, like I say, I'll just pop these into some water to soak up. I mean, that one's leaning over, but it'll straighten itself up, that. You know, brassicas like to be planted quite deeply when they go in the ground, pretty much to the first true leaves, which actually just start to appear in the middle. I mean, there is a thing where people say if they've got like 4 to 6 true leaves, they're ready to plant out. If they're big and the elements allow it, and you've got a little bit of protection from them, and you're quite confident they'll do okay, then put them out. You know, if you've got a raised bed with a nice plastic cloche over it, they could just go straight in the ground now, really. You know, and they'd manage. But I like to do more, because my plot's quite along the way, where I like to do pretty much 40 to 50% of the growth is actually done in trays and pots, and then they spend sort of like the last part of their life finishing off at the plot. Then there's no point, you know, driving miles, putting them out too soon and then things going wrong, because you lose part of the season, you know, which is always a pain. Some things that don't go right, you know, you can lose the time. You only get a season for so long. You plant too early, you'll lose some. You plant too late, your enemy's the sun. So you just got to do the best you can, and you know, I can pretty much say that you'll do all right. It doesn't have to be complicated. Keep it simple, and just hope Mother Nature's a bit gentle on you, and you should be okay. I've got 2 spare there. I might shove them into one bigger pot as a backup. You know, because I've got 12 there, which will probably actually be enough. I'll see. But that's the basic principle of it. You can put a little bit more compost around the top of them if you want. You know, once they've, you know, been watered in. I like to water them from the bottom, and it gives them a real good drink. Settle them in, and they'll be fine. So that's it for this video. You know, so my potatoes are done, my second daily peas, or my second crop of peas, and I'm going to pick the rest of these out. So the next video will be probably in a couple of weeks, you know, possibly sowing some frost tender stuff and dealing with lettuce and tomatoes and things like that. So thanks for watching, take care, and I will see you next time. Bye.